Very warm welcome to Amishakil 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following are the latest news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian news channels and all other news agencies. So please, let's go to the news.
Tonight, the landmark Supreme Court showdown, protests outside the Supreme Court as the justices hear arguments over the future of birthright citizenship in America and whether federal judges can put a halt on actions from the president. Laura Jarrett breaks down a contentious day in court. The tornado threat tonight as millions face the risk of severe storms and millions more facing hotter than normal spring temperatures. Al Roker is here. Cassie Ventura under cross-examination after painting a vivid portrait of being forced into so-called freak-offs for years and alleging Sean Diddy Combs tried to blackmail her with the videos. The criminal investigation into music icon Smokey Robinson. What multiple women who worked for him accuse him of doing. Radio silence in Denver, one of the busiest airports in North America, loses radio contact with jets for 90 seconds. What happened? The price you pay. World's biggest retailer, Walmart, says they'll have to raise prices as the Trump tariffs continue, while you may pay more for bananas and more the next time you shop. Our report on Elon Musk's XAI Colossus supercomputer, why some near Memphis say fumes from the giant facility are making it difficult to breathe. And how a missing camper who survived in the snowy Sierra for weeks was found by chance. This is NBC Nightly News.
And welcome to Hannity, and we are coming to you from beautiful Abu Dhabi, right here in the United Arab Emirates. It is currently 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 5 a.m. right here in the UAE, where President Trump capped off yet another day of his historic Middle Eastern trip. And for the third day in a row, it was a day of victories for the administration. In fact, this trip has been so productive that even former Biden officials, according to a new Axios report, they are in awe of what he has been able to accomplish. Now, President Trump began his day at a breakfast with business leaders in Qatar, where he touted the trillions in investments that he has secured and the millions of jobs that it could lead to in the United States, high-paying career jobs. Here's what he said.
We've raised trillions of dollars in investments. There's never been anything like it. And just to finish, we have a country that now has, I think, Howard, we can say that at least $10 trillion of investment and potential investment. And if the past administration did $500 billion, it was like a lot, but we did it in 2 months. I want to thank the Emir because he put up a lot in terms of investment. It could amount to 2 million, 3 million, maybe even 4 million jobs in the United States. And more importantly, it's really important stuff. It's tremendous refining capabilities. It's capabilities for very high-end. AI is a big subject, and it's a big subject over here, too. I always say, what are you investing in? It seems one thing everybody seems to have in common is AI. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. Maybe you shouldn't do it because too many people are doing it, or maybe you should follow the crowd, fellas. Okay, so you're going to figure it out. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the media. The media, I have to say, has been very fair. They've been very fair. They've been terrific, actually. I was watching some of our, normally they would not say good things, but they're having a hard time saying bad because this is a record tour. There's never been a tour that will raise, it could be a total of $3.5–4 trillion.
And in a few minutes, by the way, Howard Lutnick will join us, and he'll talk about AI, and he'll talk about semiconductor chips and the deal they signed here in Abu Dhabi. And after Trump's repeated warnings to Iran, according to a breaking report from NBC last night, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, they finally indicated they would be open to a nuclear deal. That would, according to one Iranian official, include Iran committing to never producing nuclear weapons. A
state of emergency in Manitoba this Thursday night. The wildfires ripping through the province, forcing hundreds to flee, and the harrowing accounts around the tragic deaths of one of the fires.
They were completely surrounded by flames.
Separation anxiety. First Nations communities voice their concerns as Alberta's separatist movement gains ground. Plus, Quebec's post-election drama, the ballot sparking a legal challenge by the Bloc in a riding they lost by a single vote. And long-lost siblings from across oceans.
And I now have somebody else that I can be with.
A touching meeting between two siblings brought together by the shared history of a Canadian soldier.
Global National with Donna Friesen, reporting tonight from Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with the raging wildfires in Manitoba. Premier Rob Canoe has declared a state of emergency in the southern Whiteshell area near the Ontario border. The local provincial park has been closed ahead of the busy long weekend. There are 21 active fires across the province, including an out-of-control blaze in the regional municipality of Lac-du-Bonny. Sue and Richard Noel died trying to flee that fire. Nearly 1,000 residents have had to leave their homes. 40 firefighters from BC have arrived to help, but officials say they need at least 80 more.
We've had 80 fires to date, and the 20-year average number of fires to date is 48. So you can see that as of today, we are well above average for this time of year.
Melissa Ridgen is in Lac-du-Bonny tracking the wildfires tonight. Melissa?
This region is still on high alert while fire crews and water bombers battle the fire. Folks are very much on edge, knowing that any shift in wind could put them in another harrowing life or death escape, as happened on Tuesday.
Oh, no.
Driving towards Lac-du-Bonny, quickly ran into a wall of smoke and the fire above the trees, and I literally said in the one video I took that I may have left this too late.
Ron Burley is still reeling, knowing two people on that same burning road did not make it out.
And then when I heard yesterday that 2 people had passed away on Windigo, right away I started thinking about us driving past the road that we were looking for to get out. And had I said, you know what, let's just keep going, we likely would have came upon them if we even made it that far.
Keith Gladstone knew the woman who died with her husband.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Maurice Dubois.
I'm John Dickerson.
There is perhaps no more American institution than Walmart. It has more than 4,600 stores in the United States. That's one for every 75,000 of us.
And 9 out of 10 of us live within 10 miles of a Walmart, and 95% of us shop there at least 2 times a year.
But that American institution is filled with Chinese products, making it a good gauge of the impact of tariffs.
And today, Walmart said those tariffs are forcing the discount store to raise the prices you pay for many of the products on its shelves.
Joel Kent covers business for us, and Joel, the announcement came right from the top.
That's right. The CEO of Walmart, Doug McMillon, saying what so many have been anticipating, and he said it loud and clear, that Walmart is going to have to raise prices. Walmart, the world's largest retailer, is telling its shoppers the time has come.
Even at the reduced levels, the higher tariffs will result in higher prices.
CEO Doug McMillon did not say on today's quarterly earnings call which products would face a price increase, but the financial officer indicated that prices could go up within weeks. Toys and electronics imported from China fill many shelves at Walmart. Some of those will face an import tax of 30%.
Tariffs on countries like Costa Rica, Peru, and Colombia are pressuring imported items like bananas, avocados, coffee, and roses. We'll do our best to control what we can control and
Hello, good Friday afternoon. It is 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 a.m. in New Delhi, 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Yasmin Yonkers at this hour. The first direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in 3 years set to take place in Turkey. President Volodymyr Zelensky says his team will push for a ceasefire. But with only low-level delegations sent, the U.S. casts doubt on any breakthroughs. India's Commerce Minister headed to Washington for crucial trade talks. New Delhi's disputed Donald Trump's claim that it will drop all tariffs on American goods as part of a deal. And tariff tensions dominate the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in South Korea. Divisions among members clear as the region braces for a sharp economic slowdown because of America's reciprocal levies.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak here on France 24. Our headlines this Friday. Russia and Ukraine are set to hold their first direct peace talks since the early days of Moscow's invasion. Their delegations meeting along with Turkey in Istanbul. But there's little hope of a breakthrough after Vladimir Putin didn't show up. We'll get the latest from Istanbul with our correspondent, Jasper Mortimer. The British Prime Minister says that Vladimir Putin must, quote, pay the price for avoiding peace. Comments that come ahead of a meeting of the European Political Community, a group established in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And Donald Trump says that the U.S. is getting close to reaching a nuclear deal with Iran. It comes as Tehran is set to hold talks with European nations Britain, France, and Germany in Istanbul this Friday. Thank you for joining us. Also coming up, the war in Gaza takes center stage at Cannes at a screening of a documentary about the late Palestinian journalist Fatma Hassouna, who was killed in Gaza. The film's director says that she was targeted deliberately by Israeli airstrikes. And coming up in today's press review, the race is on for Romania's presidency as the European Union braces for the potential victory of the far-right George Simion. Deepti Laurent will bring us the latest from the newspapers.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 6 o'clock. Coming up on the programme today, the Army unit tasked with investigating sex crimes accused of having abusers in its own ranks.
Plus, we'll bring you all the sport as Masters champion Rory McIlroy enjoys a torrid start to the PGA Championship, shooting a 3-over-par round of 74.
It's Friday, the 16th of May. A whistleblower tells Sky News the Royal Military Police is unfit to investigate sexual offences as it protects male soldiers and the image of the army over victims. Sexual assault and bullying and rapes are going on within the military police. How can they then go out and investigate the wider army if you're doing the same thing? It doesn't work. The highly controversial assisted dying bill returns to the Commons today. We'll bring you the start of that debate. A Ukrainian man is charged over fires at 2 properties and a car linked to the Prime Minister. Sky News talks to the family of one of the thousands of Ukrainian civilians taken by Russia and held in captivity for years.
I just can't take it anymore. Why is my child suffering like this? It's been 4 years. I could die any day and never see my child again.
And coming up in the sport, find out why several European FIFA member associations walked out of their annual congress.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. Our top story here today, a whistleblower who served in the Royal Military Police more than a decade has told Sky News that the force is unfit to investigate sexual offences because it protects male soldiers and the image of the army over victims. Amy, not her real name, claims that a staff sergeant was allowed to resign instead of facing charges, despite more than a dozen women coming forward to report him for sexual abuse. And a warning that Becky Johnson's report contains descriptions of sexual assault, which some viewers may find distressing.
It's men protecting men, and they're also trying to protect the image of the army.
Misogyny and sexual abuse at the heart of the Royal Military Police. Crime covered up by the very regiment charged with policing the army. That's the claim of this whistleblower, a sergeant who served in the RMP for more than a decade.
Sexual assault and bullying and rapes are going on within the military police. How can they then go out and investigate the wider army if you're doing the same thing? It doesn't work.
Amy says she not only witnessed abuse, but was a target, assaulted by a staff sergeant, one of the highest-ranking soldiers in her unit.
He preyed on the young, new females, and one day I was out with my friends in town and he was on patrol. 2 of us went over to speak to him, and he hooked his finger around my top and pulled my boob out, and then he grabbed my hand and put it on his penis.
She says it followed months of harassment, and she wasn't alone. More than a dozen women reported him.
So this was a criminal investigation where the Royal Military Police were investigating one of their own. What was the outcome?
They basically told me he's not going to be charged, but he will be leaving the military. Doing him a favour because he's not going to lose his pension and whatever else he would have lost with a dishonourable discharge.
And she claims there are other men in the RMP who've been accused of sexual offences.
I've known of rapes within the RMP.
Today, war veteran Ben Roberts-Smith to seek a High Court challenge after losing his bid to overturn his defamation loss.
100 reportedly killed in a series of Israeli strikes on Gaza. Hospitals have been targeted and children are among the dead. Ukraine agrees to press on with peace talks in Turkey, but the US says a breakthrough is unlikely without Presidents Trump and Putin. And Australia's milkshake man Gojo crashes out of the Eurovision Song Contest. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. Special Forces veteran Ben Roberts-Smith will immediately seek a High Court challenge to the federal court's dismissal of an appeal against his long-running defamation case. The war veteran had unsuccessfully sued 3 9-owned newspapers over a series of articles containing allegations of war crimes in Afghanistan, bullying and domestic violence. Reporter Leah Harris was in court for the decision.
It does seem that it's not over. Ben Roberts-Smith released a statement a short time ago saying that he and his team will immediately be seeking a High Court challenge to this morning's federal court decision after the full bench of the court dismissed the appeal to have his defamation loss overturned. Now, Mr. Roberts-Smith sued Channel 9 News.
Africa News. The news.
Pretoria announced late on Wednesday that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa would travel to Washington next week and meet with US President Donald Trump to discuss bilateral, regional and global questions. The South African presidency did not further specify the nature of the issues to be discussed. But the high-level encounter comes amid allegations by the US president that white farmers in South Africa were facing a genocide based on what he called racial discrimination. Trump subsequently offered a fast-tracked refugee status to white South African citizens, with 59 South Africans arriving in the US under the new scheme earlier this week. At the same time, refugee admissions to the US for applicants from all other countries, including those facing severe conflicts and humanitarian emergencies, have been halted.
To my family.
South Korea.
Former Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz has been sentenced to 15 years in prison and fined $3 million after appealing an earlier 5-year verdict. Aziz, who seized power through 2 coups before serving as president from 2009 to 2019, was convicted of money laundering and illicit enrichment, amassing over $70 million while in office. The trial, seen as a rare case of accountability of an African leader, also sentenced his son-in-law to 2 years for influence peddling and dissolved a family-run foundation at sea life abroad. Thousands of Uruguayans flooded the streets of Montevideo on Wednesday to pay tribute to former President José Mujica, the humble ex-guerrilla turned statesman who captured hearts across Latin America and beyond. Mujica, affectionately known as Pepe, died Tuesday at the age of 89. Wrapped in the national flag, Mujica's coffin was carried through the capital on the gun carriage, passing through streets lined with mourners who wept, applauded and held up handwritten signs in honor of the man they called the President of the Poor. He was our president. Thanks to him, everybody knows Uruguay. Uruguay wasn't mentioned before. Thanks for turning presidential palace. Venezuelan officials celebrated the return of 2-year-old Michaelis Espinosa on Wednesday after the toddler was separated from her deported parents and held in U.S. custody, a case that has fueled sharp criticism from Caracas toward Washington. The girl's mother had returned to Venezuela days earlier, arriving alone. We stand beside Venezuelan mothers who had their children stolen and kidnapped from them. They deliver them to what they call foster homes, which is no other than the commercialization of human beings. They see the human being as merchandise. Her father, meanwhile, was deported to El Salvador in March and is reportedly being held in a maximum security prison for having ties with a terrorist group.
The 2025 World Table Tennis Championships are set to kick off in the Qatari capital this Saturday. The tournament will feature 5 main events: men's singles, women's singles, men's doubles, women's doubles, and mixed doubles. 640 players will compete, including local star Mohamed Abdul Wahab.
Now./give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Officials in Gaza say Israeli strikes have killed over 100 people in the past day, the majority of them children and women, as Palestinians grow increasingly desperate in their daily struggle for survival more than 10 weeks after Israel cut off all imports of humanitarian aid, including food and medicine. Thousands were seen fleeing Gaza City after the Israeli military once again issued forced relocation orders, among them sick and wounded patients at Al-Shifa Hospital who were left to fend for themselves in Gaza streets.
My daughter was admitted to the hospital as a result of the siege, starvation, and malnutrition. We do not know where to go with the patients. We are fleeing from one death to another. We are dying slowly. Everything we have is over. We are dying 1,000 times every day. Until when will this let down? Until when is this siege? Until when is this weakness in our nation?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. On the NewsHour tonight, the Supreme Court hears President Trump's challenge to birthright citizenship and his effort to restrain lower court judges who block his policies.
Ukrainian and Russian officials prepare to meet in Turkey for peace talks, but who will and will not be at the meeting raises questions about whether Russia is serious about making a deal.
And a federal judge who was murdered speaks out about increasing threats to judges.
There are severe consequences to the type of rhetoric that is being used.
Visited by Patrick Christie's earlier this week. Does it prove that Patrick's visit did more to match the gangs than any government policy?
He spent quite a bit of time in that very migrant camp raising serious questions about where £1 billion worth of your taxpayers is going. And then today, bingo, the French police raid that camp.
Well, the Prime Minister remains in the Albanian capital, Tirana, to meet with European leaders for an annual summit. But can he thrash out the final stages of an EU reset without compromising Brexit?
President Zelensky will skip peace talks in Turkey after President Putin refused to attend.
And the House of Commons is set to debate amendments to the assisted dying bill after accusations that safeguards are being watered down. GB News' Catherine Forster sat down exclusively with former Disabilities Minister Lord Harper.
I prefer to call it the assisted suicide bill because that's actually what it is. I think it's very significant. Not a single organisation representing disabled people supports this bill.
Now, have you ever sent one of these, the smiley face emoji? Well, it turns out if you did, maybe you're being passive-aggressive. Apparently it's the time we're all getting too sensitive these days. We'll debate that next.
Team GB Paralympic legend Richard Whitehead is here on Breakfast to explain why running could be the key to unlocking a new lease of life.
And the King and Queen enjoy all that Bradford has to offer, with the King even giving an update on his cancer journey.
Poignant moment. The King met Sabina Khan, a local florist who survived cancer. They spoke about their journeys with the disease. Today, he's scheduled to join the Prince of Wales at Westminster Abbey, putting on a united front with his heir.
And in sport, it's all about the mud balls. In golf, that's the order of the day of Rory McIlroy as a shocker at the US PGA Championships. Next week's Europa League finalists, Spurs and Manchester United. Tough games tonight for them against Villa and Chelsea, both fighting for Champions League places. And it's FA Cup final day tomorrow. Crystal Palace will need to beat Manchester City if they're going to win it for the first time.
Widespread sunny skies return today, but will they last into the weekend? I'll have the full forecast coming up on GB News shortly.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Miriam Cates, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.